Hello, my name is Professor Stacy Watford, and I wanted to just do a real quick video to show you both in Microsoft Word and also in Google Docs how to do a footnote. We require the Turabian style citation for our papers, research papers, and so many of you may not be familiar with that particular kind of citation. So I wanted to let you know how to do that both from Microsoft Word and from Google Docs as well. So let's go ahead. Now, my Word may look a little bit different from your Microsoft Word. I have mine in what's called a dark mode. It just is easier on the eyes, but you can see the lettering. So what we're going to do, if you'll follow my mouse up here, we have a nice quote here by the great Charles Spurgeon, great London Baptist preacher, and it's out of a book that I have here. And so we're going to insert a footnote, and I'll show you how that is done in this. Again, this is Microsoft Word. Microsoft Word, you go to this tab called References. When you click on References, then you'll notice there are some things that are that change across the top of the screen. Table of contents. And then, of course, the second thing is, just to keep it simplistic, is insert footnote. What you will do is you'll click on insert footnote, and it automatically, and I'll go back up in just a moment, but it automatically jumps you back down to the bottom of the screen, or at that screen, at the page, I should say, and it has created a footnote for you. The notations that you will put at the foot, at the bottom of your document, of your page, okay? And so what we're going to have to do, since this doesn't, Word obviously doesn't know what you're trying to quote, is that you will add the citation in. Let me show you how that's done. And as far as the formatting of the citation, it's the same wherever you're at. This is the Turabian style. Typically, you start off with the last name first, then the comma, and we'll just put Charles here, Charles Spurgeon. Then you'll put a period, and then you will put the title of the book or article or even website that you're working from. And this particular title is called The Treasury of the Bible, Volume 3, New Testament. And really what people do with Spurgeon stuff is because he wrote so many sermons, they put them in various books and things like that. This just happens to be an old book that someone had given to me. And it was published, you put a period after the title, and then it was published by Zondervan. And sometimes, and I tell you what, sometimes some teachers can be very particular and ask you for the actual place it was published. If you'll just put the publishing company, that's fine. You can usually either find that on the binding of the book, or sometimes within the first couple of pages of the book. And then, of course, to make the footnote citation, you want to put the period, and we want the exact page number, so that if I were looking in this book, then you would exactly know what I could find what page you used. So I look in the book, and it's page 303 of this book. Now, what I like to do, because of titles, titles should be italicized. So I'm going to go back through, and I'm going to highlight my italics. Now, you can do this one of two ways, and you probably already know this. This is typically elementary, and that is that you can do Control-I, and that will italicize your the title of your book or your article. So what happened to the actual quote that I had? Well, when you go back up to the top of the screen, you'll see the quote that's there, and then you will see the number 1 that's behind the quote, which lets the reader know that they need to look down at the bottom for the actual footnote, and that will be the reference there. Now, a couple things to pay attention to. I'll go ahead and say them here so I don't have to say them later. And that is that if you are quoting something word for word, that you don't change the punctuation, you don't change the spelling, you don't add anything or take away from, then you need to place that quote. That's called an exact quote, and you need to place that in quotations, as you can see that I have done here. This is an exact quote from this reference of Charles Spurgeon. If you're going to simply take what somebody said and paraphrase it in your own words, then you still need to cite the source. You still need to let the reader know that, hey, this is not from my brain. I'm actually borrowing this thought from someone else. You still need to cite the source. And I'm not talking about everyday things that we may use in our own conversation. I'm talking about legitimately you're using something from a book and you want or an online source, and you, instead of quoting it exactly, you want to take those words and word them in your own way. Then that's called a paraphrase. You do not have to have quotations with a paraphrase. So keep that in mind, that with exact quotes, word for word, punctuation for punctuation, exactly, you need the quote, and then there's the footnote for you. But if you're going to do a paraphrase, you still need the footnote, but you do not have to have the quotation. Okay, so this is Microsoft Word. I'm now going to move over to Google Docs. I've used Google Docs before, and it's for the most part, very, very similar to what Microsoft Word is, except for one thing, and that is to find the footnote in Google Docs. If you happen to be using Google Docs, you need to go to the Insert tab. There will be a drop-down menu, and then you simply go to Footnote. Now, if you'll notice on the Google Docs, you'll notice that there is also what we call hotkey for footnotes. In other words, you could hit the Control button, the Alt button, and the F button at the same time, and you will create a footnote. I'm really not crazy about hotkeys. Sometimes I use them like for bolding or italicizing things, but for doing footnotes, just simply click on it. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to run you all the way down to the bottom, and you're going to type the same thing in. Not Charles, sorry, last name first, Spurgeon, Charles, and then of course the Treasury of the Bible, volume, you can actually abbreviate volume 3, New Testament. Make sure you put your period. It's by Zondervan. It's published by Zondervan. Put your period, and then the page number was 303. Same kind of concept. And of course, when you scroll back up, you'll notice that your footnote is nicely placed there, and place it at the end of, obviously at the end of your quote. I've seen some students, not in this class, but in other classes, where they've tried to place footnotes at the beginning of the sentence. That don't do that. Place the footnotes always go at the end of the quote, at the end of the sentence. So I hope this helps in understanding how to place footnotes either in Microsoft Word, which is typically what most people use, or Google Docs, which Google Docs is a free version. If you have a Google account, if you have like Gmail and Google account, it is a free version of a word processing. In other words, it functions the same way basically as Microsoft Word. If whichever one you're using, if you're using other ones, other kinds of things, like if you're using a Mac specific program, then you may want to check and just kind of explore those usually it's going to be somewhere in these drop down menus if you're using something completely different. But for Word users, Microsoft Word users, or Google Doc users, this is how you insert a footnote.